Welcome back to Women on the Brink. Today we're diving into a topic that, I think probably every working mom can relate to, that nagging feeling of not doing enough, whether it's at work, at home, or even in the PTA. The voice in your head just keeps telling you, I'm not cutting it. But here's the twist. It might not be reality talking. It might just be your confirmation bias. Stay tuned as we unpack what confirmation bias is, looking at the life of a working mom as an example. And then more importantly, learning how to shut it down so you can start seeing yourself and your accomplishments for what they truly are. Hey there, this is Women on the Brink. I'm your host, Chris Jeffrey, a registered acupuncturist and wellness advisor with a passion for helping women live happier and more balanced lives. When I'm away from work, I'm usually outside in nature, either walking the seawall or I'm hiking in the mountains. And like many of you, my life has been filled with moments of hardship, some that I thought I couldn't overcome and really left me questioning my own strength. But through these challenges, I discovered resilience, courage, and a renewed sense of purpose. So I'm here to share not just my journey, but the lessons I've learned, and to remind you that no matter what obstacles come your way, there's always a path forward. And just to let you know, this podcast is not prescriptive. It's an offering. So please take what resonates with you and leave the rest. So let's start with the basics. Confirmation bias is when your brain focuses on evidence that supports what you already believe about yourself, while ignoring everything that doesn't fit with your narrative. So, for example, I used to believe that I was a really terrible cook. My brain used to highlight all the experimental meals that went wrong, but it completely overlooked the countless meals that my family really loved. I was always trying to, get vegetables down my kids when they were little. So I'd sneak them into sauces by pureeing them or make a challenge out of it by seeing who could make the most colorful mini pizza with vegetables. And I have to admit, they were pretty good sports, my kids, but my youngest daughter put mint sauce on everything when she was little, even my vegan spaghetti. So, was she trying to tell me something? In any case, my confirmation bias that I wasn't a good cook, it eventually shifted, but it did take some time for me to refocus my attention on what I was doing right in the kitchen, rather than what it would have been Gordon Ramsay's worst nightmare.
What the fuck?
As for working moms, we're particularly vulnerable to confirmation bias. Why? Because we're juggling so many roles and responsibilities. And as we know, society loves to hand us impossible standards to live up to. I used to feel really bad because I wasn't the working mom who, came home and made dinner and then helped the kids do their homework and then ran off to run the PTA meetings at school. I knew how limited my energy levels were, so that just was not happening for me. So let's talk about some other ways that confirmation bias shows up in real life. So here's a few examples. So you're at work, and you're on a Zoom call and stumble over one sentence in your presentation. And what does your brain do? It immediately replays that moment on a loop.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Convincing you that you embarrassed yourself in front of your entire team. Meanwhile, the rest of the 20-minute presentation you nailed, completely forgotten. And then at home, your child forgot their homework and you're convinced it's because you're not organized enough. What a bad mom. Never mind the fact that you helped them build a stellar science project last week. Nope, your brain just wants to focus on the one time you dropped the ball. We're all like that, right? Or how about when you were late to pick up your child? We've all done that, or at least know someone who has. So I had an experience that I'll never forget. I was a single parent at the time with 3 school-aged kids, and I was going to school full time. It was my turn to carpool 3 kids and my daughter to soccer practice one evening. And I was so stressed out that in my mind, I drew a complete blank on where I was supposed to pick up one of the kids. Like I knew the street, but I couldn't remember the house. And in all fairness, the houses on this very long street were very similar, and I'd only ever picked this girl up from the house once before. But I was so unprepared. Like I didn't have the girl's address or phone number on my phone. And the soccer list with all those details were at home. So I ended up dropping the other kids off at practice and then going home and calling the girl's mom to apologize. But I felt like a complete disaster. And this experience only affirmed that I was truly losing my mind. The mom assured me, though, that, it was okay and that they had been debating about whether to send their daughter to practice that evening because she wasn't feeling very well anyway. So she did provide me with some comfort. But, not only were the kids in the carpool watching me frantically trying to figure out where to pick this child up, but my confirmation bias was telling me how disorganized I was and that my problem-solving skills really sucked.
I'm sorry, but I cannot fix this problem for you.
Then there's social media. And here's the big one that, almost everyone gets. So you're scrolling through Instagram and you see another mom who's posting perfectly curated pictures of her family vacation. And your brain goes, see, other moms are managing to do it all, and you're barely getting by. And of course, you don't know what's going on behind that photo, but confirmation bias convinces you it's evidence that you're falling short. So, we can see how confirmation bias works against us. But the big question is, how do we stop it? So stay with us until after the break, and we will break that down.
Join us on our website for articles from our podcasts at www.womenonthebrink.net. There you'll find extra tools that can be used to raise self-awareness and build resilience. We want to make this experience as interactive as possible for you Brinkers. So join the forums, introduce yourself, and share your stories.
So there's a few things we can do to stop confirmation bias from happening. And the first thing is we need to challenge the narrative. So we have to get back to taking control of our thoughts. When we hear that voice in our head starting to say, you're failing, just stop and ask, where's the evidence? Like in my case, the fact that I couldn't locate that girl's house to take her to soccer practice made me feel like I was really losing my shit. So I called a girlfriend and I told her what happened. And, I was all teary because I felt like, my brain had done the ultimate betrayal of not remembering something so simple. But she reminded me that I was focusing on one small mistake and that I was ignoring the bigger picture, how well I was holding a household together on my own and doing very well in traditional Chinese medicine school. So I just kept trying to flush that old narrative down the toilet. And then the second thing is I started doing a win journal. I started writing down 3 things that I did well or that, went well throughout the day, no matter how big or small they were. So maybe I aced a project deadline or, I read my daughter her favorite bedtime story, or I managed to get everyone out of the door, on time in the morning, that's no small feat. So for me, those were all pretty big wins.
Yes!
And seeing those wins in writing helped me to rewire my brain to focus on the more positive things. And the other thing is to surround yourself with real talk. Like I found spending time with other working moms really reminded me that nobody has it all together. And when I shared my struggles and listened to theirs, I found it to be a great way to combat the, unrealistic expectations things like social media throws at us. And again, I mean, we women need these communal reinforcements with other women. And the more that I work on this podcast, the more I realize how important it is that we women form these support networks, whether it's, paid, volunteered, or just through our families and friendships. I know I could never do it all on my own. So please don't ever feel that that should be your journey either. Create support groups or delegate some of the tasks, to make your life more manageable. And the other thing is, again, just celebrate those small things. You don't have to wait for a huge accomplishment to feel proud of yourself. Like, did you finally tackle that laundry pile? Celebrate it. Did you manage to pack lunches the night before instead of in a mad rush in the morning? Celebrate that too. Small victories do matter. And one thing that I remember doing when I was married, I hired a house cleaner to help me out a couple of times a month. Of course, I usually cleaned the house before she came. I mean, don't we all? But with 3 small kids, the house was always a little upside down. So on the days when she would come to clean the house, I would go out and do the grocery shopping. And when I got home, I would just walk around the house or sit in a chair in the living room and bask in a clean, organized house for half an hour or so before I had to go and pick the girls up from school. That to me was such a great feeling. And I mean, they were very fleeting moments, but for me, I needed to celebrate these small victories. So one of the most powerful things you can do is start rewriting the story you tell yourself. Like, instead of saying, I'm failing as a mom, try saying, I'm doing my best and that's enough. Remember, your kids don't need a perfect mom. They just need a present mom. And your colleagues don't need a flawless coworker. They need someone who shows up and does the work. And you don't need to meet every impossible standard. Remember that. You just need to recognize your own self-worth. So thanks for joining me today as we tackled confirmation bias and the life of a working mom. Well, I mean, all moms are working, whether you stay at home with your kids or you're working in the workforce, earning an income, let's face it. And let's remind ourselves of that. So if this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who could use the reminder that she's doing better than she thinks. And if you've got any tips or stories about how you combat mom guilt, I'd love to hear them. So tag me on Facebook or Instagram or send me a message. Until the next time, remember, you're not just surviving, you're actually thriving, even if your brain sometimes forgets to tell you that. Thanks for joining, and I want you to know that this isn't just a podcast, this is a movement. So share this information with your friends, and let's go, ladies.